Denise, your one nugget, your final thought here about the panel?
Okay, well, I think what we need to do moving forward is to put together a working group to identify the most promising components of a multi-component approach. I think clearly we need a multi-component approach that addresses several different levels. We need probably some of the same people that talked at this workshop can come together and work together to see how, what would be the most promising components that would be included, and how they might fit together. I mean, we had lots of consistency across the panels in suggesting what some of those components might be. One would be ways to involve more people in the school community in being part of the solution, especially involving students of high status in becoming part of the solution. Another idea is starting with the adults in the school to clarify norms against bullying. As Whitney said, we can't have teachers and coaches condoning bullying. And so we need to figure out a way to address the norms among teachers and other adults in the school. We need ways to promote real meaningful connections among the people in the schools, and lots of ideas have been raised over the last couple of days, promoting just general respect for diversity, as Asher was talking about, even teaching people to just, or setting up structures to allow for even brief interactions, connections with people that might mitigate the effects of bullying. Everything from that to more drastic changes, such as reorganizing the way students are grouped for instruction. So I think, we just need a group to take this to the next level now and sort of see how this would all fit together.
Thank you. Catherine?
One piece that struck me is how everybody responded so much to the biological impact of bullying. I actually teach a class on the impact of stress on the body and mental health, and while I'm very familiar with that literature and cover it in my classes, I never really thought about connecting it when I do public presentations around bullying. But seeing how much people were really persuaded by that, I would be very quick to try to incorporate that mechanism. And certainly cannot do justice to the great presentation that was provided, but that kind of piece aside, knowing that people are responding to that level is really very eye-opening to me, and it's certainly literature that I'm very familiar with and I have responded to, but hadn't really thought that a broader audience would be interested in that kind of mechanism about biological responsivity. Another thing that is really very critical for us as we think about intervention research is this issue of what works for whom under what circumstances. Unfortunately, our research designs rarely allow us that luxury to examine different mediators and moderators, but we need to work collaboratively with methodologists. It's great to have Hendricks here, who talked today about fidelity, but he and his colleagues really think a lot about innovative methodological approaches that we can apply even with our existing study designs to try to really understand mediators and moderators. So I think better partnerships with those of us that are fielding randomized trials and studies with methodologists, that we can try to marshal our data a little bit better to make more sense of what's working under different conditions. And we might need to think creatively and innovatively about how we can do that, and not just look at the main effects of our interventions or how they're modified by some basic types of things, but really try to understand more process and complexity.
Thank you. Jonathan?
So it's hard for me to say one aha moment. I mean, for me, in a sense, it's the further it gets away from my own work, the less familiar I am. So what I appreciated so much is the interdisciplinary nature and the fact that I had an opportunity to learn from fields that I sometimes don't get to interact with quite as often as I would like. So that was really a privilege. In terms of what was missing, I'll just offer two quick thoughts. One is I think we need to focus more on structural issues. And I know they came out certainly at various points, but I think a lot of in this country we're very good at sort of focusing on the individual at times, and I think more of a focus on sort of that context is important. And one point about that I'll just highlight is incentives. we're asking when we find out what's a successful intervention, and this is for schools as well, we're asking them to do a host of things, but their incentives still remain, testing and other things that, there's a lot of good research that shows agencies with competing interests over time default to their primary goals that are incentivized. And so we have to think about and change incentives if we're, or sort of add new incentives if we're going to ensure that people, same for parents as well. And then related to that is a coordination. I think in this discussion we saw obvious places for coordination, but seeing that it's needed and ensuring that it happens successfully, particularly among agencies that might have various sort of very reasonable barriers to coordination. Again, is coordination incentivized? But so that's a challenge for us, sort of how do we move forward in creating a coordinated response?
Thank you. Nina?
From the youth panel, and I concur with Whitney that today not enough was said about the link and not leap between bullying, sexual harassment, sexual bullying, teen dating violence, whatever you want to call it, perhaps adult relationship violence, since it may not occur in the context of dating, as middle schoolers tell me that dating is for old people. Thinking about bullying as a detriment to school performance, similar to a learning disability, I thought was a very useful notion and maybe less stigmatizing. Having the focus not only on teachers but collaboration between all school personnel and healthcare professionals to curb bullying is, I think, very key. And what was missing today, I would say, was what are the personal characteristics of adults that would incentivize students who might be bullied or peer victimized to go to that person, and who are those people in school systems?
Thank you. Megan?
I think one of my aha moments was listening to the discussion about implementation and how important it is to get community and stakeholder buy-in. And it made me think a lot about having the school personnel panel and having the youth panel here and how much they contributed to our discussions. And to me, it made me think these are people we should be bringing to the table at every stage of our research projects and not waiting until the implementation stage, so we could get so much more information about what might work and what theoretical models are really resonating with the people who are going to be implementing these and affected by these. I really got a lot out of the school panel and understanding the different constraints they're up against, as well as the opportunities and the creative ways that they're doing interventions in their own contexts. And I also really enjoyed the youth panel's discussion and really being willing to share their experiences with us. And it made me think a lot about how we need to do more work on this older adolescent population and do more work with folks like you so we can understand the factors of resilience that have led you to be able to become leaders on your own in being part of preventing and intervening with bullying. How can we understand how we can help you in the efforts and the things that you're working on that are so important?
Thank you. I guess for me, I'll come back to what I started with yesterday, which was that it is important to view bullying as preventable. I've not heard anybody in the last 2 days say it's not. So although we need more research and we need to refine our interventions, there are things that work now. There are things that we know what to do. And I think really it's up to us to act and to make sure those happen. So I'd like to end with that. I want to thank people both here and on the web for participating in this. I want to thank our panelists, the youth panelists and the school panelists for making the trek and to really being here and listening carefully for 2 days and sharing us with your thoughts. And then thanking for the presenters, who really, all of them did a terrific job. When putting together a panel like this, you always worry there's going to be a couple of ringers in there, but it wasn't the case. All the speakers were really terrific. Thank you for the planning committee. Thank you for the planning committee, who really did a great job in planning this, conference calls, email to make sure that what we were doing was going to be useful to everybody. And of course, thank you to Patty, Tara, and Stacy, and Kimber for really organizing this thing. we kind of sit up here and look like we're the ones that did all the work, but we really didn't. It was Patty and her group that really did it. And then finally, thank you to her staff for sponsoring this workshop. What will happen next is that, as I said yesterday, the slides and the webcast will be up on the web at the IWEM website within the next couple of weeks. And then the workshop will be published as a report. We have a writer who will be taking the information down, the tapes of the sessions, and putting into a cogent form. And one of the things we'd like to get from you all is if you can send to Patty and us information about who you think that should be disseminated to. There'll be a certain number of copies that are printed, but we'll also have a PDF that can obviously be widely distributed. So if you let us know who you think would be the right targets for that. So again, thank you very much for participating.